Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. And we have made it to opening day of this 2047 season. And the Buffalo Wings this year are going to try to build off an excellent 109 win season last year that unfortunately did end in a defeat in the NLCS. We think our pitching may be even better than it was a year ago, largely driven by the free agent acquisition of Nehemiah Vidale, who should be an outstanding addition to our rotation. Really love our top four of Lance, Vidale, Danny Black, and Alexis Barajas. The lineup could be a little bit weaker this year. We lost a couple of important players, our starting shortstop, Damani Essien, and the outfielder, Josh Porter. Don't know how well we've replaced them, quite honestly, but we do have a lot of young talent. Juan Toledo and Daniel Aguayo-Leal will both be spending their first full seasons in the majors this year. Arturo Casares, last year's Rookie of the Year, back for a second go-round. Juan Paloma was a rookie last year. Josh Fuchs going to be making his full-time major league debut this year. Our starting center fielder is unfortunately on the injured list right now, and that's opened up roster spots for the likes of Kevin Griffith and Yanardi Langley. One of them will likely be headed to AAA in a month or so once Ishmael Velasco is ready to come off of the IL. But the predictions are that we will be once again one of the best teams in baseball, projected to go 102-60 this year, and projected to have a lot of strong offensive players and a excellent season from Vidale. So now it's time to see if we can get these Buffalo Wings into the playoffs for a 20th consecutive season. And our Buffalo Wings are not off to as dominant a start as we've had in previous years, but still 8-5 through our first 13 games. We've won 3 in a row and 7-3 in our last 10. So certainly playing better after a bit of a slow start. We would be the third wild card team in the National League if the season ended today, but we're only 13 games into the season, so it's actually a little bit silly to even be talking about such things quite yet. And we've continued on our great run, going undefeated over the last week. Jim Reichert was just named Player of the Week, 12 for 21 with 3 homers, 5 ribbies, and 8 runs scored. So last year's National League MVP off to a nice start this year. And with the 9 wins in a row, we're now 2.5 up on the Marlins in the National League East. And we are tied with the Twins for the best record in baseball. And the first month of the season is in the books, a 20-7 record for the Buffalo Wings. We had a really long winning streak that recently came to an end. 5 games up on the Mets already. And that 20-7 record is the best in baseball. Taking a quick look at the leaderboard, Jim Reichert second in the National League in home runs after leading the league in homers and ribbies a year ago. Chad Aguirre, working out of the bullpen, has 3 wins, tied for third in the National League. Taking a look at our stats here through the first month of the season, the offense still very good, tied for first in the National League in runs scored, and the pitching still very good, tied for second in the National League in runs allowed. Pitching staff, the starting has been solid. Jim Lance with a 5 ERA has been disappointing. Certainly expect that to get better. But the relief has been absolutely insane. Of the 8 relief pitchers, 6 of them have ERAs of 1.69 or lower. Floyd Auclair, the stopper, has a 2.10 ERA. And then Joey Bills, a 5.40 ERA in the second smallest sample size out of anyone in the bullpen, just 6 2/3 innings. So everything's going really well with the pitching staff. As far as the everyday players, just want to note that we did finally get Ishmael Velasco back. He played a couple games in Albany, and then we just promoted him. He was 0 for 4 his first day of the year, but he is taken back over as our center fielder against right-handed pitching. So our primary center fielder, we've moved Casares back to left field. Over the month that Casares was the starting center fielder, he was a slightly above average defensive center fielder. Given that he won a Gold Glove in left last year, we're going to return Mr. Velasco to his traditional spot in center field. Checking in on the youngster Josh Fuchs, who we put in as our starting shortstop against right-handed pitching. He's platooning with Juan Palomo. And only facing righters, he's hitting as well as we could have possibly hoped. 303 batting average, 6 doubles, and 3 homers in 66 at-bats, 144 WRC plus. Certainly not expecting him to continue hitting at that rate. But the splits do favor him, as we talked about in the last episode. We think he can at least be a competent offensive player against right-handed pitching. If he continues to improve a little bit, he can be even better than competent, but he is closing in on 25 years old, so the magnitude of any future improvements, don't know why I was trying to say approvals there for some reason, but the magnitude of any future improvements for Josh Fuchs likely to be relatively modest. Fielding-wise, his range is not as good as we thought it would be a few years ago, but he has still been a slightly above-average defensive shortstop thus far. Hopefully, with the great coaching we have, maybe he gets a little better in terms of some of his defensive ratings over the next couple of years. And we've made it to June 1st, another excellent month for the Buffalo Wings, led by Niabaya Vidale, the free agent addition, 5-0 with a 1.23 ERA in the month of May, being named the National League Pitcher of the Month, 8-1 with a 1.89 ERA on the year. So he has been everything we would have hoped he would be and more. Our shortstop, Josh Fuchs, has been banged up. He's ready to come off of the IL now, hitting 283 over 106 at-bats, so he's slowed down a bit, but also hasn't played as much because he's had a couple of back injuries this month, a strained back that he kind of played through, and then some back stiffness, and you can see his last 4 injuries over the past few years have all been back issues. A little concerned that maybe those day-to-day injuries become more significant over time. So we tried to be a little conservative with him, put him on the IL, but fortunately he is back now and ready to go. Taking a look at the standings, 39-16 record, the best in baseball, 9.5 games up on the Nationals, and we are 5.5 games up on the Cardinals for the best record in all of the major leagues. Arturo Casares, last year's Rookie of the Year, second in the National League with a 2.2 WAR this year. Pitching-wise, Vidale having that monster year, leads the league in wins, third in ERA, and he's leading the National League in pitcher WAR here on June 1st. And we've made it to draft day 2047, and it's going to be an interesting opportunity for our Buffalo Wings because we are going to have 3 first-round picks. Now, they'll all be late first-round picks by virtue of our 109-win season a year ago, as well as the fact that our qualifying offers to both the outfielder Porter and the shortstop Essien were not accepted. So we will have 3 picks. But before we do that, in our effort to keep this season rolling along with OOTP 25 less than a week away, we're going to kind of do 2 things for one in this episode that are normally rolled into separate episodes. We're going to do our mid-season review before kind of highlighting the players that are available for us in the draft. even though we're only 73 games into the season, still have played enough to have a good sense of who's doing well and who is not doing well. Overall, the team at 53-20 has a 10-game lead over the Nationals for the best record in the NL East, and we have a 9.5-game lead on the Padres for the best record in baseball. Jim Reichert, who led the league in homers and ribbies a year ago, tied for second in homers and leading the league in ribbies once again. Pitching-wise, Vidale in a great battle with Chris Newell. They're tied for the league with 10 wins. Newell's ERA of 2.07, slightly better than Vidale's 2.13. And Vidale is third in the National League in pitcher WAR. Taking a look at some of the team statistics, our 53-20 record is actually a game worse than expectations. Still first in the National League in runs scored with 405, no longer tied there. And we have improved to first in the National League in runs allowed. Defensive efficiency, we're second. Zone rating, we're first. Fifth in steals. Base running is kind of our biggest weakness. We rank 12th in base running, tied for 10th in walks as far as offensively, and 7th in strikeouts. And every other offensive and pitching category, we are in the top 5 in the league. So the season going very well for Buffalo. Jim Lance hasn't been exceptional, 5-2 with a 4.22 ERA as our ace. Vidale, though, 10-1 with a 2.13 ERA. Danny Black, a bit of a sophomore slump, 5-4 with a 4.50 ERA. Barajas is 6-3, and Jim Coles is 7-2 as our number 5 starter. So overall, the pitching's been good. Chris McClintock, our closer, has been absolutely lights out. 14 hits and 3 walks over 27 innings pitched, a 0.33 ERA, and a 0.63 WHIP to go with 3 wins and 18 saves. Stopper Floyd Auclair once again eating up a lot of innings, 63 1/3 at this point with 90 strikeouts and a 1.99 ERA. Luis Palencia, Chad Aguirre, Danny Kashuk, and Ari Caper all have ERAs below 2. Joey Bills has gotten his down to 4.79, and Solano Toselli, who is our lone long reliever, a 2.70 ERA over 40 innings pitched. So the pitching staff, as expected, has been outstanding. I think the only question is, do we move Vidale into the number 1 role ahead of Jim Lance? You can see his stuff is better. Control is equal. Lance has a little better movement on his pitches. He also throws a little harder and has a little more stamina than Vidale. Lance is a 3-pitch guy. Vidale is a 4-pitch guy. I think all else being equal, probably will look to maybe move Vidale into the 1 hole after the All-Star break, when we'll have some natural time off to kind of reset the rotation. But it'll be pretty good to know that in any playoff series, if everyone stays healthy, we're going to have Lance, Vidale, Black, and Barajas on the mound in some order. Turning to our hitters, Steve Banks has been our starter against right-handers at catcher, and he's hitting .266, 7 homers, 32 ribbies, been close to a league average offensive player. So he's done a nice job for us there. And Juan Ramirez hitting just .205 and 73 at-bats, even though he has had the benefit of only playing against left-handed pitching, or primarily playing against left-handed pitching as a right-handed hitter who's our starting catcher against lefties. So I think it makes sense that we've moved Banks and his somewhat better bat into the starting lineup more regularly. The pitching still seems to be excellent. So although on the margin Ramirez is better defensively thanks to his arm, I think this move still makes sense. Kevin Griffith, like having that captain personality on the team, he plays only against left-handed pitching, hitting just 226 with one homer in 62 at-bats. As much as I like and embrace having the captain personality on the team, we've got another one with Coles in our starting rotation. So Griffith's spot on the team could certainly be in jeopardy going forward. Jim Reichert, as we've talked about, following up his MVP season from a year ago with another strong offensive year. The batting average has dipped to 255, but 20 homers, 63 ribbies, both near or at the league lead. The 127 WRC plus is lower than a year ago. He's not a great defensive first baseman, which doesn't help, but still delivering the offense that we'd like to see. Ramiro Medina, the second baseman in what could be his last season with us, hitting 281, 18 doubles, 9 homers, and 270 at-bats, 116 WRC plus. Another nice, solid offensive year from Medina. Danny Ferguson, the third baseman, hitting 271, 16 homers, 16 doubles, 5 homers, 104 WRC plus, so a bit above average offensively. Not a great player, but he's signed to a very reasonable contract and is likely to be with us for years to come, particularly if we end up losing Medina this offseason. Josh Fuchs is healthy now. You can see he hasn't really improved in any of the categories where we thought he might, and the batting average has dipped down to 245 for the year, so he's definitely been struggling since he came back from that back injury. Now a below-average offensive player, and taking a look at his fielding stats, he's actually a bit below average at shortstop defensively this year, too. So perhaps an upgrade at shortstop is something for us to think about. The good news is that we've got Juan Palomo on the team right now, and although he's not as good defensively as Fuchs, he is hitting 298 this year with a 103 WRC plus. In a perfect world, Palomo's probably more of a second or third baseman. He conceivably could end up starting second baseman for us a year from now if we're unable to bring Medina back. If we had... I just don't know about Fuchs and Palomo right now as an everyday shortstop. The platoon's working fine, but if there was a position that we would be looking to upgrade in the next month and a half before the trade deadline, I would think that shortstop would still be in the mix. Daniel Aguayo-Leal, 147 at-bats in his first full year in the majors, hitting just 231, 7 homers, 19 ribbies, 101 WRC plus. Is definitely not fully replaced Porter as an offensive player. Another guy who our scout thinks can get a bit better. Arturo Casares, last year's Rookie of the Year, hitting 294, 21 doubles, 15 homers, 51 ribbies, 127 WRC plus, and a 2.6 WAR. So he has been more than fine, although honestly both Reichert and Casares a little less productive than they were a year ago. Jamari Habersham getting an opportunity to play more and to play every day with Porter gone, and he's hitting 320 for us, has 21 doubles, 15 stolen bases, 107 WRC plus, has been a useful bat for us, DH and leadoff against righties, and right fielder and leadoff against lefties. Ishmael Velasco missed some time at the beginning of the year, as we talked about, but kind of doing Ishmael Velasco things, 293 average, and in 174 at-bats, he's got 12 doubles, 7 homers, and 7 stolen bases, 127 WRC plus. Seems like that's a figure a lot of our big offensive players have this year. And last but not least, Juan Toledo, hitting just 241 in 216 at-bats, his first full season in the majors. But he does have 18 homers and 35 ribbies, so he's put up a 130 WRC plus. Still strikes out a lot, but this is an international free agent signing of ours from over 8 years ago at this point. That's one of the more prominent and expensive international free agent amateur signings we've done in this playthrough, and looks like he is now establishing himself as hopefully a pretty important member of this team for many years to come. So I think if we're going to do anything, it's probably addressing that shortstop position. And honestly, if we do address that shortstop position with someone who could be a starter, that kind of upgrades the infield by moving a Fuchs or a Palomo into more of a utility role, and likely moving Griffith down to the minors. Take a quick look. Not sure how big the trade block is going to be here on June 21st. Doesn't look like there's any big time shortstops available on the trade block yet, unfortunately. Very slim pickings at that position. Devin Sensenig, 32-year-old. Don't really view him as being much of an upgrade, so it could be a situation where we're going to have to explore things a little more fulsomely to find a shortstop that might be able to help us. And we could continue to go with the guys that we've got. Just being somewhat objective about it, we're still 53-20, even without ideal play at the shortstop position. So things are going fairly well, even though I think we could be better there. So we've still got about 6 weeks until the trade deadline. So if you've got thoughts on what we should do, would love to hear them in the comment section down below. As I mentioned, right now I'm thinking potentially upgrading at shortstop is something that we'll think about. Other than that, there's not a lot of holes in this team. And although the top talent is going to certainly be off the board of the draft by the time we are making our first pick at number 33, as I mentioned, we've got 2 supplemental picks because of the departures of Porter and Essien. So we'll be picking 33rd, 38th, and 39th. So the players who are going to be available for us, we're going to get a good chance at 3 of the guys that we really like. It's really just a matter of how many of the top players available are still on the board when it comes to our pick. So we'll auto draft ahead, and you can see here there's 3 position players that are more than 3-star potential. Right fielder Matt Diggs, like the home run power, like the eye. Not going to have many extra base hits at all with that poor gap power and the poor speed. But looks like he could be a useful bat. Pretty competent corner outfielder defensively. Nothing more, nothing less. Devin Grout is a second baseman, but his defensive abilities are not incredible. He's kind of a corner outfielder or first baseman, quite honestly. Another guy who looks like his bat could be interesting, but not exceptional. Do like the high work ethic that he brings. And Eric Pineda, a center fielder. He's an interesting prospect, like the high adaptability, work ethic, and intelligence. He's incredibly fast, above average base runner, plus contact, plus gap power, plus at avoiding strikeouts, potentially an average home run hitter. Like the outfield range, not great in terms of his error rating and his arm. At 6'3", he could definitely also play first base with those ratings. So if he fully developed his bat, he'd be a pretty interesting player. Not going to draw a ton of walks, but really good contact, really good gap power, really good at avoiding strikeouts, and looks like an average-ish home run power bat. So first glance, I think I probably like Pineda most of those three players. Take a look at the top pitchers who are available. I'm guessing that Ron Sedano is not actually a starter. Or maybe it's just one of those years where no one's been looking at starting pitching, because there's only, as I said, 3.5 star or higher position players left, but there are 8 pitchers with 3.5 star potential or more. We'll start with Bobby McLeod. The issue with him is just that his stuff doesn't look exceptional. Probably not the direction I would go. Daniel Manduhano, 18-year-old. That curveball develops. He's got a 3-pitch arsenal. He's durable. The control, a little bit of an issue. I think I like Precision Machine Manduhano a bit more than McLeod, but presumably I'm going to like some of these other players even more. Talbot Chasen, relief prospect out of Canada. Looks like a pretty interesting pitcher. He's going to have a 3-pitch arsenal, most likely. He's durable. He's listed as a reliever, I think, just because of his poor stamina, but 17 years old, throwing in the mid-90s. I don't know that I take him in the first round, but he's certainly an interesting prospect. Maximilian Bradley, fragile 18-year-old high schooler, going to be reliant on a changeup or a slider developing to get to 3 pitches, plus stuff, plus movement, and plus control if everything works out perfectly. Josh Beal, a reliever, got a fastball slider combo, like the high work ethic, 22 years old out of App State, throws in the triple digits. Stuff really good, movement and control need some level of improvement. And then the top 3 prospects, at least according to their potential by our scout. Sergio Marmolejo. Don't love the low adaptability, work ethic, and intelligence. He definitely looks like he projects as a reliever to me. Could be a pretty interesting reliever. Probably not a guy I'm going to take in the first round. Greg Allen, durable, 18 years old, throws in the high 90s already. Only going to be a 3-pitch guy, but I don't think he's the first guy I'd take. Could I see myself taking him with one of the supplemental picks? I think possibly. And last but hopefully not least, Ron Sedano. High work ethic, low intelligence. He's got the durability. 19-year-old throwing in the low to mid 90s. Looks like a potential 2-way guy. So that's interesting. Could have a 5-pitch arsenal. Most likely will be a 4-pitch arsenal. Could possibly only be a 3-pitch arsenal. But his fastball, his forkball, and his sinker aren't far off major league quality. So it doesn't look like his stuff is ever going to be dominant, but his movement and control could both be above average, well above average. So he's certainly interesting to me. Taking a little deeper look at his batting ratings, he's got the potential to have some pop in that bat. 65 home run power, contact about average, eye about average, below average gap power, below average at avoiding strikeouts. But he's got potentially 65 infield range, 55 error, 55 arm, 50 turn double play. So it's kind of an interesting combination. I like that he's durable. I like that he's got the high work ethic. I don't love the low intelligence, but to me, he kind of projects as a back of the rotation kind of starter. And you can combine potentially that back of rotation kind of starter if you really can get to 50 contact, 65 power, and 50 eye, he's a starting third baseman with that profile and someone you'd happily start there with the excellent range. In a perfect world, you'd like the arm to be stronger, but with that turn double play rating being only a 50, he could play second also. I'd probably play him at third, but I think he could play either position. So if the bat fully develops, he's a second baseman or a third baseman with some pop, and he is like I said, back end of the rotation kind of starter. So he's a pretty interesting combination to me. I'll give you one last thing to look at for those of you who like to share your opinions and help me make the right decisions in my drafts. Go back to the batters here and just flipped to the batting potential. See if anybody we haven't talked about really stands out. Josh Duff, a third baseman, looks decent. Ken Rock, a first baseman. Again, a decent, reasonably well-rounded batting profile, but nothing that really jumps off the page. Right fielder Ramiro Arroyo, pretty well balanced, has some speed, durable. Third baseman Josh Castellino, decent prospect. Third baseman Dan Craighead. I think I like Castellino better. Don't love some of those personality traits, and I think Castellino's glove is better for guys with very similar hitting profiles. Greg Hackley, another third baseman. Phil Harrison in right field. Gordy Harvey, first baseman. A lot of guys here with 55 power potential. Devin Meredith, not going to strike out much at all. Anyone with off-the-charts contact. We've already talked about Eric Pineda. I said he was probably my favorite of the top 3 ranked position players we looked at. Jesus Heredia, there's an interesting player. Durable shortstop with some speed, good bunter, high work ethic. Probably another guy who's really more of a third baseman, although it doesn't look like that's a position he's played in the past, but plus contact and gap power, not going to strike out much, and a little bit of pop in the bat, and he's going to walk a little bit. I don't hate him. Lou Vargas is a center fielder, another guy with some speed, contact, gap power, not going to strike out much. Ernesto Espinoza, another guy with a similar profile. And then Greg Hackley, we already talked about. Mike Knowles, center fielder, another guy with some speed. So there's definitely some interesting prospects out there. Looking forward to seeing who we're able to ultimately end up with, since we do have at this point 3 of the next 7 picks. Pineda is certainly interesting to me. And he's not looking for much money at all. Presumably he'll end up saying he wants slot when we draft him. And among the pitchers, certainly the potential two-way guy, Ron Sedano, is very interesting. Kind of think that combination of a solid major league pitcher with a potentially respectable bat with some pop and a potential respectable glove is just kind of a very unique and interesting combination. He's not a Shohei Ohtani or a Babe Ruth, but unlike those guys, it looks like he could play a pretty respectable infield, which does have a certain amount of value. So definitely have some interesting decisions to make. I'll be giving it some more thought, obviously. If you've got thoughts on which direction we should go in the draft or with the major league team, always helpful to get that feedback. And in our next episode, we're going to do the draft, find out who our all-stars are, and play this thing right through the trade deadline to figure out what this team is going to look like as we try to win another title here in 2047. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.